Weźcie go, cofnijcie może, co? No jak?
Nie, bo widzę, że to 10 minut, a to jest inaczej. Dobra, jeszcze nic to nie zmieni.
Nie, bo jak się podsunie, tak siedzi.
Yeah.
No nie, bo jeszcze nas tu trochę będzie. To...
Za cukierka.
Nie, to też nie. Jak?
No dobra, no to...
Pokaż, że masz.
Muszę pójść do sklepu i wezmę.
Ale tu nie tylko pan też się.
Też nie wyniosę.
No pięknie. Świątecznie.
Czy coś śmiesznego było powiedziane?
Nie, cieszę się po prostu, cieszę się. Naprawdę, to miły widok, miły widok.
Bardzo elegancko.
Świątecznie. No to, bo to jest święto, no.
Święto polskiego. Na tym koniec.
No tak wyglądało. A, bo tu musiałem chwilę odejść. Minus 12, no. Tak, może mamy. Tak, 7. Dobra,
No nic, taka rezydencja, taka sala jest w miarą...
stojący w ekonomii minus.
No.
Dzień dobry, cześć.
Cześć,
Małek.
Ta konferencja o niczym takim
dlatego, że sala jest mała. Dlatego.
Bo autobus odjeżdża za 3 minuty.
Gratuluję.
Nie wiem.
Szansa na sukces.
Nie zrobi się na poście.
Co?
Cały czas kombinuję, żeby w poniedziałek się
Też się przyzwyczajony do tego, powinno być marszałek? W takich sytuacjach, jako gospodarz, kurwa, a nie jako poseł. Marszałka zakopaliśmy głęboko. To jest trochę słabe, no.
Grzegżółka jest dyrektorem.
Co żona ci głosi?
Dyrektor Sejm Information Center. Z tego nic nie będzie, jeżeli tu nie wpadną jakieś, moim zdaniem, atrakcyjne setki dotyczące protestów. Paulo Ali powie, że zaraz idzie tam, no to podejrzewam, wygląda na jakiegoś Włocha albo Portugalczyka, ale nie wiem.
On jest chyba szefem.
Tak, to pytanie, czy jest Portugalczykiem? Portugalczyk obstawiał.
Paulo Sousa.
Włochem.
Też Paulo Rossi.
Jakoś nie mam z tym problemu. Włochy. Paulo Ali.
Bo to jest pewnie aluminiowe, tak? Główsze, tak. Zasiężne. Przytrzymasz i ona wyjdzie. Ale co to robić? A pamiętasz jak W dużym świecie często wpadały klawiaturę te nakrętki, śrubki. Duży świat. Duży świat. Ja też jeździłem po słonie. Mój pierwszy samochód. Jakieś te baterie?
Słuchaj, wtorek podpisuję chyba.
Pani polonezy też ma polonezy, nie?
Nie ma kasy.
Przepraszam was, pan chcę tylko zrobić brawurowy...
To jest masa.
Wiesz co, drogie. Tak wszystko na styk. No bo to wiesz, myślałem, że zjesz gdzieś sam, no to wiesz, jedna słowa. Matka leciła z to jedno, a trzy schodzi. Nie wiem, czy to jest jedna jest nie najlepsza, a reszta to wiesz. To jej. Nie, nic nie wiem. Już trudno. Wyjebało ich. A, to może na tym oficjalnym programie trzeba sprawdzić.
Nie tak, ale... Tam szczególnego nie ma.
No. Ja potwora domyślam.
Gdzie tak. I potem jest nowa lampa.
Nikt po prostu nie uwierzy. Nie uwierzy. Wersja eksportowa dokładnie. Jest tam, chodzi pani z koszulką, tak? 500 dla niepełnosprawnych?
Nie, te transparenty tam.
A, okej, okay, jest transparentna. No to nie zrobię, nie? Nie, żartuję. Okna zrobiłeś? Okna? Tam okna zrobiłeś? Potrzebujesz jakieś...
Podobno ten ma pójść, ten...
Paulo?
Jak to nie? Puszczą go na pewno.
Jego tak, ale czy nas?
Nas? Na pewno nie.
Wiesz co, to może się odbyć, bo tam chyba kiedy w sobotę czy w niedzielę, w niedzielę jest jakaś sesja tam w sali plenarnej.
Wchodzimy od tyłu, pamiętasz jak na Zgromadzenie Narodowe wchodziliśmy? Od poczty? I tak, bo już tak wchodzimy na górę od kabełki kuluarami.
Że nie wchodzisz do tego holu głównego.
Drzwi zamknięte są nawet do toalety tam na wiesz. Odseparowane jest w całości.
W sobotę nie ma sali głównej, jest po niedzielę, tak?
I chyba w
8:45. Czyli wejście o 8.
Albo jeszcze wcześniej.
Poniedziałek 8 rano. Szerokiej drogi. Wszyscy mają być. Morawiecki, Duda. Szef NATO, Stoltenberg. Wszyscy mają przemawiać.
Naraz.
Ma być okupacja mównicy.
Rano właśnie już, tak? No to tego Czaputowicza wypadałoby zrobić, nie?
Nie bywa tutaj wiedzą.
Myślę, że możemy zaczynać.
Right, I think we can get started. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the opening session of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. This is the press conference, and we're starting our 4-day-long meeting here at the Sejm and Senate. And it's our honor to be able to welcome many international politicians and many guests from lots of countries. We hope that this will be a very important event here at the Polish Parliament. Now, for some organizational remarks. In a minute, I'm going to give the floor to the head of the Polish delegation to the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Mr. Marek Opiola. Then over to Paolo Ali, head of the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. And then we'll get some time to ask questions. And I would ask you to keep the questions restricted to the topic of this summit. Anyone who is interested are asked to use interpretation devices.
An official inauguration of NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Mr. Marek Opioła. Then I will pass the floor to Paolo Ali, President of Parliamentary Assembly, NATO Parliament.
Right after Poland joined NATO in 1999. It was back then that Poland organized the spring session of the Assembly. Then there was a short break until 2010, which is when the spring session. And I would like to thank the President and the Secretary General very warmly for agreeing for this session to be held here in Poland. And I'm thanking you because we had a NATO summit here in Warsaw 2 years ago, and many important issues concerning security, the eastern flank, the southern flank, changes in NATO structure. All these decisions were made back then here in Warsaw. Right now we're starting the spring session, and we are going to talk about the changes that were first defined in Wales and then in Warsaw. And we are also going to talk about what awaits us in the future. So the most important plenary session in July in Brussels, the NATO summit in Brussels. The main topics that we are going to talk about is international situation, security situation, the development of the alliance facing different threats, and importantly, It's very important that NATO Secretary General is going to participate in the session, as will the President of the Republic of Poland, Andrzej Duda, Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, and others. On Monday, the meetings of the different committees start today. The Standing Committee, for example, to prepare the main sessions that in turn start on Saturday, and the different committees will convene on Saturday and Sunday. And the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of National Defense, representatives of the Polish Armed Forces, and other invited guests have agreed to appear at these meetings. It's very important for us to present the perspective of the eastern flank. We are here in Warsaw, and we want to have a very concrete discussion about these things. We have lots of think tanks here in Poland, for example, the Eastern Studies Center, and they will present their point of view at different meetings over the coming days. So hopefully here in Warsaw we will get a chance to talk about the most important things. So once more, Paolo, David, let me welcome you very warmly, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later on. Thank you very much. And it's now over to the President of NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Mr. Paolo Ali. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Marek. Thank you to all our Polish friends for the effort you have done in organizing this session, which is quite important, as you were telling before, for NATO Parliamentary Assembly, I think for NATO itself and for Poland. Well, the NATO Parliamentary Assembly is not NATO, represents the political and parliamentary dimensions of the NATO countries. It is composed of 266 members from the 29 NATO countries, plus another around 100 parliamentarians from more than 30 partner countries or associate countries. So it is a wide parliamentary assembly where we discuss and approve resolution regarding policy, regarding defense, regarding security. We talk about technology, we talk about climate change, several issues which are more and more connected to security in a global world. I think that it's very important that we meet here in these days because Poland is celebrating two significant anniversaries, the 100th anniversary of your regained independence and the 550th anniversary of Polish parliamentarism. So this is a circumstance which gives a particular meaning to our gathering here. And I have to say that this assembly takes place at the moment where very crucial for NATO and for international security. You see what is happening not only in our country or at our borders, but also very far from here, from Korea to the Middle East, to Venezuela and other several countries around the world, and security is more and more connected, global, and NATO represents the strongest and largest and most important political and military allies in the world, the most successful in the story of the world, and NATO wants to improve and project stability outside the borders, while we are facing some other actors who prefer instability, to export instability. We think that stability around the world is the base for peace and for a durable peace in the world. NATO is demonstrating a stronger solidarity with Poland. The adaptation to this new challenges coming from East has given rise to the strengthening of NATO collective defense and deterrence. This has translated into the deployment of 4 battle groups, as you know, in the Baltics and in Poland, and the presence here of the United States-led contingent is a clear demonstration of our solidarity to Poland. And it shows also that we recognize that the eastern borders of Poland are the eastern borders of NATO. This is something which I always say also in my country. You know, I am from Italy, and we always ask the international community, Europe, to understand that the southern borders of Italy are the southern borders of Europe. In the same way, we have to recognize that the eastern border of Poland are the eastern borders of Europe and of NATO. So solidarity is not just a word. Solidarity is something very concrete and very practical. As Marek was telling before, this is the third session hosted in Poland, and also this is quite important because it means that you are great hosts, and that it also means that Poland is strategic for European and global security. Of course, we will discuss about NATO priorities. We are approaching the NATO summit between the members of state and government in July in Brussels. That will be a crucial time discussing about transformation of the global environment, transformation of NATO, about issues related to defense spending, security in the Eastern Front, the Mediterranean front and Middle East, but also more generally about the role that our organization can have to project peace and stability outside our borders. We will adopt a resolution which will be proposed to the summit in Brussels, and the resolution covers all the issues regarding the NATO activities, and not only from the military point of view. I wish to point out again that NATO today is not only a military organization, it's a military and political organization. And I should say that going on with the time, the political dimension becomes more and more important. So this document will be approved, adopted by our Assembly in the final session and plenary session on Monday. I'm sure it will be an important contribution to NATO from the political and parliamentarian point of view. I don't go into details of the resolution. You will have the chance to get the final text of that. So again, thank you, Marek, and thank you to all our colleagues. You have an excellent delegation to NATO Parliamentary Assembly, and we recognize your continuous contribution to our important and delicate job regarding security and peace in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Proszę Państwa, mamy...
Ladies and gentlemen, we have some time for questions, so let's just remind everybody that we have to stick to the topics here at the summit, and please tell us who you are asking the question of.
Redakcja Faktu.
How about Fakty TVN? To start with the first question. I'm sorry, but the interpreters do not hear the question. No, please, there is a microphone, if you could use it. Thank you. Okay, I didn't know anything about the microphone, so excuse me for that. I wanted to ask Mr. Opioła about the protest held right now in Polish Sejm. Do you think that this assembly of NATO will have any impact on the protesters, and the other way around, whether the protesters will have any influence on this assembly?
Aware of the fact that there's a disabled people protest held in the main hall of the Polish Parliament, and you received a letter from European Disability Forum. It's a letter of regard and worry about what is happening right now in Polish Parliament, of mistreatments and so on. What is your perspective on that?
Proszę, panie przewodniczący, może.
So maybe the president could answer. I do understand your concern about the protesters and the security of them, but now this is the strength of our parliament, is that in such a difficult and challenging situation that we are right now in. The fact that the assembly is here in Warsaw and in Sejm is very important. I believe it will have no influence whatsoever, because the speaker and I would like to say thank you to the speakers of the Sejm and of the Senate right now. They have expressed their acceptance and approval for the session to be held here in the buildings of the Parliament. And for me, it is very important that we will have a chance to discuss the security issues here. And that concern for me as a member of Parliament, I have to say that we had a number of meetings of Minister Rafalska with the Protestants. We have some legal propositions and changes prepared right now. And let's leave it at that. And to conclude, I believe that it will have no influence whatsoever on the Parliamentary Assembly and its sessions, and I believe we will be able to discuss our matters and all those important matters on security freely and without any problems. I believe also that we'll have a lot of interesting discussions and disputes on the security, because those people, the participants who are here with us, are going to discuss important matters during several committees. On Monday, we have the plenary session together with the participation of the Secretary General of NATO, with Polish President. I'm sure this will all provide a lot of interesting material for us, and also the Prime Minister, among others. So I believe that the plenary sitting on Monday will happen and will be safe and will be the regular business as it usually is. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, regarding, I read the open letter which has been addressed to several officers, including myself. I have to say that in every country there are debates on those issues, particularly welfare and so on. We have it in Italy several times. It is mainly an issue of internal politics of each country, and I'm sure that the Polish government, the Polish parliament will find the best solution for this problem. But of course, I cannot say anything about what is happening, unfortunately. I hope that our session, I'm sure that our session, as Marek was saying, will go on regularly, because it is of interest of everybody that we can have open discussion on very important topics like security, as I told also in my first speech.
Dziękuję bardzo. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, who is the next one? I understand you have your own order of asking questions. Now, Radio Z. Good morning. I would like to ask Mr. Opioła whether this Parliamentary Assembly will end with some conclusions, some frameworks for the summit in July. Well, of course, as the President has said before, we'll have a draft adopted, and we have discussed this on the Standing Committee in Vilnius a month ago, and it will be adopted, and the conclusion will be adopted. It is being prepared from the reportees by one of the reportees from the Great Britain, and we have the document already on hand, and we're going to discuss it. But in order to make it more clear, this spring plenary session, this spring Parliamentary Assembly, is actually described by one document, really. In fact, all the major acts that are linked to the specific committees happen during the autumn session and autumn assembly. So that's why here we'll have only one document, and here we're going to discuss matters that are connected to the summit in July. But looking at the international situation, do you have any special issues, whether this is Syria or some other issue? Well, actually, everything is included in that document. We have many different parts of the world which we discuss. These are among others. This is because all the delegations have the right to introduce their amendments, and of course we had those amendments already, and we are going to discuss that during the plenary session. However, the discussion has been happening for several months now, because this subject, this document that we have during the assembly, of course, will take its final form. But before that, each and every delegation has the right to have amendments. Thank you very much. It's worth reading through the program of the plenary of the Parliamentary Assembly. We have all the details there. And now the question to the Mr. Director. I wanted to ask about the specific security measures that were taken in Sejm. We journalists do not have access to the Sejm today. During the last previous assemblies, we had our own media zone where we were allowed to enter. We could easily get access to the Sejm. Today, we are completely cut off. The Protestants. We are not supposed to be recording in the buildings, in the premises of the Sejm. We are only able to be here. If you could please clarify why you changed your mind, because yesterday you would declare something different, and today we're completely cut off from the Protestants. To be honest, let me clarify. Those things that I promised yesterday are going to be fulfilled. However, today it is an extraordinary day. It's Friday. It's the beginning of the assembly. This is the day for the politicians to come to Warsaw. Maybe those meetings are a bit of a less formal and official nature. However, starting from Saturday, we will allow the press to have the free access and to have the ability and to have the possibility to have those galleries for media, to have the right seats in each and every room. If you feel like doing it, you will have the possibility to take part in all the events. But this is talking about the general organization. This is not anything new, that for almost 40 days now that the protest that is happening in the buildings of the Sejm does have the influence on our operation and our functioning and daily functioning, and that's why we're trying to make our best out of it. Since we have now the most important, one of the most important events here in Sejm and Senate, we didn't want to move it to any other premises. This is how we had to implement certain organizational changes, which will allow us to effectively and efficiently conduct the assembly and will allow the protesters to continue with their action. These are difficult decisions, not easy ones, but we have to somehow make do, and this is how we try to solve it. Now, Polsat News. Good morning, Olga Owczarek. Now the question to the head of the Polish delegation. I have the question about the Polish priorities for this assembly, and also a question to the president of the Parliamentary Assembly. Good morning. I'd like to ask you, because you've mentioned that we will have discussions on the spendings. Is that the moment to maybe mobilize, to actually promote increasing of the spending for defense? Well, truth be told, what is important for us is the eastern flank. That is the most important issue for us. So the presence of the forces of the alliance right there, and back in Wales and in Warsaw, we also discussed that as well. And today we continue to do so. We want to convince our partners, our parliamentarians from other countries, to show them the situation. We want to talk about the maneuvers in 2017, Zapad, military exercise organized together by Belarus and Russia. We want to present our comments and remarks and to say that from the perspective of what's happening in general in the world and in Europe, and how important this part of Europe is, and that we need the common understanding of all our partners and allies. And of course, we don't say that this eastern flank is the most important part. We know that there are southern parts. We have the migration crisis. We have missions continued in different parts of the world that we also should react to and have discussion about with our partners. But what is important for our delegation, what is important for our government, for the ministers, for the president, as I understand, we will talk about the solidarity of the alliance, that the solidarity of the alliance makes us be active on all those fields. And these kinds of assemblies and sessions lead to full understanding of priorities of each delegation and each country. And thus the meetings that have been held for almost 50 years of the parliamentarians of the NATO are supposed to serve as a forum to exchange information, because it's the only opportunity for us to talk on such a broad scope. And this is it's not enough to have bilateral meetings only. So here we have the chance to meet in a bigger crowd, to discuss and to exchange those information. That is, in fact, the truth for all the meetings that I took part, for all the assemblies I took part.
Well, the NATO countries agreed in the summit in Wales in 2014 to reach the goal of 2% of GDP in defense spending within 10 years, which means within 2024. Poland is one of the few allies which already has got to this number. Others, including my country, is lower. But I have to say that since the Wales summit, we have stopped the decrease of investments, which was general in Europe, and now there is a new increase in spending. Of course, the pledge is valid. Every country has to work on that. But I would like to point out that we not only have to spend more, we have to spend better. In fact, the other parameter is that at least 20% of the defense spending must be on investments. That means quality of the defense expenditure. And I would like also to point out that in our discussion, it appears very clear that we have in some way to measure also the real contribution which every country gives to global security and global missions, for example. Poland is present in Afghanistan, is present in Kosovo with their contingent. That's a demonstration of not only spending money in your country, but also giving a positive contribution to global security. And the last thing which I want to underline is that from this point of view, it is very important the debate we are having since a couple of years on the relationship between NATO and the European Union. your country, as mine, are members of NATO and members of the European Union, and the discussion on the European common security system must go on and must build synergies with NATO and not duplications. So also in that case, it is one of the points of our resolution to strengthen the relationship between European Union and NATO. Will be useful also to qualify better the investments for defense and security. I want to point out that now, today, spending for defense is not only spending on military issues. I just recall cybersecurity, which requires a lot of investments. It is becoming more and more important. Just to say that security is more than military.
Bardzo dziękuję. Proszę Państwa, mamy...
Thank you very much. We're running short on time, so please 2 or 3 last questions. TVN24. My name is Paweł Łukasik. I have a question to the director about yesterday's events and the intervention of the Parliamentary Guard. According to the new law on Parliamentary Guard, a guard has to be uniformed and has to be wearing a badge. Did you break internal parliamentary regulations by not ensuring that?
Concerning the Korean issue, after the summit meeting in Singapore was cancelled, what kind of solution you see in the tension in Korean Peninsula?
So the first question is for me, so you will answer the second. Proszę Państwa, miałem
I commented on the intervention of the Parliamentary Guard yesterday. The Parliamentary Guard has been and will be active in these exceptional circumstances in the Sejm according to its prerogatives. The situation is very special. The political temperature and the political image of this protest is changing, and we are adapting our activities. And also, the Parliamentary Guard has to somehow find its way around this new situation. Every day brings about new challenges in this case. Can a guard intervene without a uniform and without a badge? The man you mentioned is a guard, and he was in a position to perform his duties. But I suggest we move on to question number 2.
Okay. Well, the Korean issue is a very delicate and complicated one. Of course, NATO itself does not have any role, but we observe very carefully, both at NATO level and NATO Parliamentary Assembly. We have made a visit to one of our committee last year, and there will be another one September this year in Seoul. I was in Seoul last September, and we tried to understand what are the complex dynamics of what is happening in the region. We will discuss about this topic in our committees also, because the Assembly every year makes a series of documents and reports which are available on the website of the NATO PA. So I recommend you to give a look at the website, which is very rich of contributions, and we will go on discussing. I personally think that what is happening there is more the confrontation between China and the United States in the region. It's a problem of sphere of influence, of course. And so in this way, we can understand why the tensions are not being solved up to now, but I'm confident that at the end, as the process has been started, I am confident that at the end we will get to a final solution which will be good for not only for them but also for us, because we know that today the use of nuclear weapons can affect the entire community, world community.
Just come in brief. If you erroneously asked me a political question, and I'm the head bureaucrat, but I would, having just heard a few questions, just like to point to the press programme for this session, because as Marek pointed out, we're only at this session doing one policy recommendation, because that's very much focused on the timing for the NATO summit, and that will be our collective advice for what should come out of the summit. But if you look at the press programme, we've laid out a list of all the speakers, all the reports, and if you're interested in international relations, as you'll see, all those meetings are going to be open to the press. We have a report specifically on security in the South Korean and the Korean Peninsula. We have one on the Iran deal. You will see that virtually any security issue in which you have an interest is going to be addressed somewhere during the course of the next few days. And in terms of delegations, I should point out it's quite broad, and we've got 50+ delegations here. On top of that, we've got interparliamentary assemblies, but one of those delegations is South Korea. And so I would encourage you during the next few days also to interview some of the representatives of the countries that are here and get some of these issues addressed directly as well. Thank you.
To słuszny apel. Polecamy relacje.
Yes, this is a very valid comment. A lot of different sessions, so please use this opportunity. Wojciech Cegielski from the Polish radio. I would like to ask more about the eastern flank and also the resolution to be adopted at the end of this session. From the point of view of Poland and our region, what concrete solutions or proposals for the upcoming July Brussels summit will find their way into the resolution? In other words, the current shape of the eastern flank, is it, according to people who signed the resolution, sufficient, or will you propose that some changes or improvement should be made on the eastern flank?
Which has been expressed in the draft of the resolution that will be adopted on Monday, is mainly based on two considerations. First of all, we must continue to strengthen the deterrence on the eastern flank, because we don't see up to now any changing the behavior of the Russian Federation, and so what has been done and said in those years still continues to be valid. We hope we will never have to use the Article 5, of course, but that means that we have to increase the deterrence and so be more and more concrete in supporting our friends living in the eastern flank. Second point, NATO should maintain the dual-track approach to Russia, which means strong deterrence and openness to dialogue. We know that the dialogue and power are the two faces of the same coin. If you want dialogue and you don't have power, it's impossible that you succeed. If you only have power and not dialogue, it would be a disaster for the humankind. So it is important that we keep this deterrence on one side and being open to dialogue with the Russian Federation.
To, co powiedział pan prezydent, można...
Yes, there could be one more thing to add to what the president said. We must understand the characteristics, features of this particular meeting, which is the assembly. We have representatives of parliaments and politicians who, if I say so, they chart the general course and they express their opinions on these important issues. But if you're asking now about very concrete provisions to be included in the document, well, the character of this document is a bit above these details. As Paolo said, we have to signal certain things. We've got to emphasize certain areas to be discussed. But then every individual delegation present at the Brussels summit, every head of government or every president, will have their own important points on the agenda to carry out. And obviously the Polish delegation will also have their own list of things to sort out. But these things are to be worked out in the individual offices and during the summit in Brussels. Now, the document that we are working on here in Warsaw is to talk about an outline or certain suggestions that different delegations can see as valid as they introduce their amendments and proposals that we discuss together. So in this document, there will be no detailed provisions on, for example, the size of the forces, the size of the battle groups, or where they are supposed to be stationed, or the reaction time. We don't have this sort of detail in the documents adopted by the Assembly.
Gazeta Wyborcza, bardzo proszę.
Justyna Dobroszoracz. Sir, I have one question. Are you planning to visit the protesting people inside of our Polish parliament? Thank you.
No, frankly speaking, those people, because I think that I cannot in any way interfere with something which is internal issues of this country.
Bardzo Państwu dziękuję za udział w spotkaniu.
Thank you very much for this meeting, and we will be happy if you keep track of what's happening here, and see you soon.
Dałbyś radę jeszcze na przykład krótką setkę, jakby była możliwość?
Generalnie